They called it the Desert of No Return, a land so cursed that no traveler ever returned alive. For centuries it had swallowed men whole, leaving nothing behind but bones, whispers, and fear. But in the summer of 1874, one man stepped into its heart, not a soldier, not an explorer praised in books, not a name etched into history, just an unknown wanderer, a forgotten survivor whose story the world was never meant to hear. For the first 3 days, he walked with nothing but a half-empty flask, a torn leather satchel, and the will to keep moving. The sun blazed like fire on his back. His shoes sank into burning sand, and his lips cracked with every breath. But he refused to stop. By the 5th day, the desert revealed its cruelty. Storms rose without warning. Winds sliced against his skin, and shifting dunes mocked every step. He searched for shelter but found only hollow cliffs and jagged stones. Then came the hunger. His food was gone. The land offered nothing. But the desert was not lifeless, it was alive and dangerous. Scorpions crept from beneath the rocks. Snakes slithered across his path, their tongues tasting the air, their eyes glowing with hunger. Every sound in the silence was a threat. Every shadow was death waiting to strike. Most men would have surrendered, laid down, waiting for the desert to take them. But not him. He clawed through the sand, catching lizards with bare hands, swallowing them raw just to see another sunrise. He drank from bitter cracks in the stone, water so foul it burned his throat, but it kept his heart beating. He tore strips from his clothes, wrapping them around his face to shield against the burning sun. Slowly, painfully, he turned himself into a survivor. Then came the 12th night. The moon glowed silver across the dunes, the desert whispered in silence. And that's when he heard it, the hiss. From the shadows, a serpent emerged. Massive. Its scales shimmered like black oil, its body coiled with deadly grace. One strike could end him, one mistake, and he would vanish into history, like the others, another nameless skeleton, swallowed by the sands. And in that moment, he understood the truth. This desert was not just a place. It was a battlefield, and survival here was war. This was only the beginning of his 248-day fight against death itself. The 12th night in the desert was unlike any before. The dunes glowed under a pale moonlight, and the silence was so complete that even the wind dared not whisper. That was when the hiss came, low, sharp, ancient. From the shadows between the rocks, it slithered forward, a serpent unlike anything he had ever seen. Its body stretched longer than a man, thick as a tree branch, scales glistening like liquid black stone. Its eyes burned yellow, locked onto him with hunger and patience. The unknown wanderer froze. His body screamed to run, but his mind knew there was no escape. Sand offered no refuge. The cliffs loomed too high, and the serpent was fast, faster than fear itself. The beast coiled, muscles tightening, preparing to strike. He gripped a jagged stone in his hand, his only weapon, his only chance. Sweat ran down his face, mixing with the dust, stinging his eyes. The night stretched into eternity. Then, lightning speed, the serpent lunged. He rolled, barely escaping the strike. Sand erupted as its fangs tore into the ground where he had stood. His heart pounded like thunder. He swung the stone, striking against the serpent's scales. But it was like hitting iron. The creature hissed, its tail whipping violently, sending him crashing against the rocks. Pain exploded through his ribs. He gasped, but he refused to surrender. Crawling, bleeding, desperate, he searched for another weapon. His hands found nothing but shards of stone and dry sand. The serpent loomed above, ready for the kill. Most men would have prayed for death, but not him. In that desperate moment, he remembered the fire, the spark of survival that had carried him through 12 endless days. He scooped up a handful of sand, waited until the beast coiled again, and as it struck, he hurled it straight into its eyes. The serpent screamed. Its massive body thrashed wildly, blinded, furious. He seized the chance, snatching a broken shard of rock and plunging it deep into the soft flesh beneath its jaw. The serpent writhed, twisting violently, its tail smashing against the cliffs. Dust and stone rained down. He held on, pushing the shard deeper, until finally, the beast collapsed into the sand still. Silence returned to the desert, but it was not peace. It was a warning. Exhausted, he collapsed beside the serpent's lifeless body. His chest heaved, his skin torn, his hands trembling. For the first time, he realized what this place truly was. The desert was not just testing him with heat, hunger, and thirst. It was sending predators, trials, monsters born from the earth itself. And if this was only the beginning, what horrors waited in the days ahead? As the moon faded and the first rays of dawn lit the sky, he pushed himself back to his feet. His body was broken, his spirit bruised, but his will was alive. He had survived the serpent's trial, but the desert was far from done with him. The dawn after the serpent's trial came with no warmth, no comfort. The sun rose like a blade of fire cutting across the dunes, reminding him that the desert was not finished. His ribs ached with every breath. His hands shook from exhaustion, but he forced himself to move forward. Staying in one place meant death. By the 21st day, his body had changed. His skin was leathered, burned, and torn. His muscles carried only bones and willpower. He no longer looked like a traveler. He looked like a ghost stitched together by survival. Yet he walked, because each step was proof that he was still alive. Then as he crossed a jagged ridge, the land revealed something strange. Below stretched a valley shrouded in darkness even beneath the blazing sun. The cliffs rose high on either side, casting long shadows that twisted into shapes of men and beasts. Locals once spoke of this place in whispers, the Valley of Shadows. No man dared to cross it, no man returned from it, but he had no choice. His water was nearly gone, his strength nearly broken. The valley offered two things: danger and the possibility of shelter. He descended slowly, the cliffs rising taller the deeper he went. The air grew colder, carrying the scent of decay. Bones littered the ground, human, animal, indistinguishable. He could feel eyes on him, though he saw nothing. Each step echoed like a drumbeat in a tomb. Then came the noises. Whispers, footsteps, the rattle of stone. At first he thought his mind was breaking. Hallucinations born from hunger and thirst. But when the shadows moved, slipping across the cliffs, gliding without form, he knew this was no illusion. Something lived here, something that did not want him to pass. He pressed forward, clutching a sharpened stick he had carved from driftwood days before. His eyes scanned the darkness. Shapes shifted just beyond his vision, thin, tall, almost human, yet not. Their presence pressed on his chest like a weight, each breath harder than the last. Hours dragged on. His legs faltered, his body begged him to stop. But the valley did not allow weakness. A single pause felt like an invitation for the shadows to close in. So he kept moving, step by step, heartbeat by heartbeat. By the time night fell, he was half delirious. The stars above were hidden by jagged peaks. The valley swallowed all light, leaving only a suffocating darkness. He curled against a stone wall, clutching his crude weapon, his ears tuned to every sound. Then, as the moon briefly broke through a crack in the cliffs, he saw them. Figures, dozens of them, tall, skeletal, their eyes hollow yet burning faintly with light. They stood in silence, watching him from the edges of the valley. Not moving, not breathing, just watching. His heart thundered in his chest. He tightened his grip on the stick, knowing it would be useless against such things. But he also knew something else. Surrendering was not an option. For 12 nights he had fought hunger. For 9 nights he had fought thirst. For 1 night he had fought the serpent. And now, in this cursed valley, he faced something far worse. The darkness itself. The Valley of Shadows was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that pressed against the ears, heavy, unnatural. And within that silence, they stood dozens of figures, tall and skeletal, their bodies cloaked in darkness, their hollow eyes flickering with faint, ghostly light. The wanderer's breath caught in his throat. He had seen death in many forms: hunger, thirst, the serpent's strike, but nothing like this. These were not men. These were not beasts. They were something in between, or something beyond. For hours they did not move. They simply watched. Their heads tilted, their glowing eyes never blinking. His heart pounded louder with every second, but he dared not close his own eyes. If he slept, if he faltered, they would come closer. And then, they did. Slowly, silently, one of the watchers stepped forward. Its bones creaked like old wood, its arms impossibly long, its shadow stretching across the sand. The others followed, their movement unhurried. Like predators confident their prey had nowhere to run, the wanderer gripped his crude weapon tighter, though he knew it was nothing against such creatures. His survival depended not on strength, but on something deeper, fearless defiance. The first watcher drew near, its hollow face bending low until its burning eyes hovered inches from his own. He could feel its breath, or perhaps the absence of breath, sucking the warmth from his skin. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to obey. So he did the only thing left. He screamed back. A raw, primal roar tore from his chest, echoing through the valley. He swung his stick with desperate fury, striking against the Watcher's hollow frame. The sound that followed was like shattering stone, a screech that pierced the night. The creature recoiled, its form twisting unnaturally as if made of smoke and bone. The others stirred. Their hollow eyes flared brighter, their movements no longer slow. The valley came alive with the sound of rattling bones and whispers, like wind through 1,000 graves. The Wanderer staggered backward, his chest heaving, his throat raw. He knew he could not fight them all. Not with wood, not with stone, not with mortal strength. He needed something else, something he did not yet have. But the valley offered no mercy. The Watchers advanced, surrounding him, their forms closing in like the walls of a cage. Their whispers grew louder, words he could not understand yet somehow felt, accusations, curses, promises of death. His vision blurred, his body trembled, and the air itself grew colder with each passing second. Then silence again. All at once they stopped. The Watchers froze, their burning eyes lifting upward toward the cliffs. The Wanderer followed their gaze, and what he saw stole the breath from his lungs. Above, at the edge of the valley, stood a figure, human, tall, wrapped in rags but alive. Another soul? Another survivor? It was impossible. No man entered this desert and lived. No man but him, and yet there it stood. The Watchers began to retreat into the darkness, fading like smoke as if the stranger's presence commanded them. The valley fell silent once more, but the terror in his heart did not fade. He was no longer alone in the valley of shadows. But the question was this new figure a savior, or something far worse? For 24 days, the Wanderer had believed he was the last man alive in this cursed desert. Hunger, thirst, the serpent, and the Watchers, each had convinced him that this land belonged to death alone. And yet on that night, as the Watchers vanished into the dark, a figure appeared at the cliffs above, human, tall, wrapped in rags that fluttered in the desert wind, a shadow against the moonlight but alive. The Wanderer's heart raced. Could it be real? Another survivor? A traveler who had somehow endured the same torment? Or was this another trick of the valley? The figure did not move at first. It simply stood, watching him the way the Watchers had. Then slowly, it descended the jagged slope with a steadiness that spoke of experience. Not a stumble, not a hesitation. Every step deliberate. When it reached the valley floor, the Wanderer saw its face, half covered in cloth, eyes sharp, reflecting both wisdom and madness. It carried no weapon, no pack, no sign of struggle, yet its body bore the scars of survival. "You shouldn't be here," the stranger said, his voice a rasp like sand dragged across stone. The Wanderer froze, his own voice lost in shock. For 24 days he had spoken only to himself, only to the silence. Hearing another human voice was both salvation and terror. "Who are you?" he finally managed to whisper. The stranger tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "No one remembers names in this place. Not yours, not mine. Only the desert remembers." The words chilled him more than the cold night air. The stranger motioned for him to follow. Against every instinct he obeyed. Together they walked deeper into the valley, where the shadows thickened and the air grew colder. The Wanderer's mind spun with questions, but he dared not ask. Something about the stranger's presence demanded silence. At last they stopped at a hollow cave carved into the cliffside. Inside, the glow of a small fire flickered, impossible yet real. The Wanderer stared in disbelief. Fire meant warmth, fire meant life. But who had kept it burning in this forsaken land? The stranger sat by the flames, gesturing for him to sit as well. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, thirst cracked his lips. Exhaustion weighed on his soul, but above all, suspicion burned in his mind. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of fire. Then the stranger spoke again. "You think the desert is trying to kill you," he said. "But you're wrong. It's trying to change you." The Wanderer's eyes narrowed. "Change me into what?" The stranger's gaze lifted, and for the first time, the Wanderer saw something in those eyes, something that wasn't entirely human. A glow, faint but unmistakable, like the firelight reflected from within. Into what? Indeed. Before he could ask again, a sound echoed from outside the cave, a deep resonant growl that shook the stone. The fire flickered, shadows danced violently against the walls, and the stranger's expression hardened. The cave trembled with the sound. a low guttural growl that rolled through the stone like thunder. Dust rained from the ceiling, the fire sputtered, and both men froze in silence. The stranger's eyes glowed faintly in the firelight. "It is awake," he whispered. "The desert's true guardian. The reason no man escapes." The wanderer's chest tightened. He had fought hunger, thirst, storms, serpents, and shadows, but never had he felt such dread. Whatever lived beneath the sands was not simply a beast. It was the desert itself given form. The ground split open with a roar. The sand outside erupted in a wave as though the earth itself had come alive. From beneath it rose a monstrous shape, an ancient creature of scales and stone, larger than any serpent, older than any legend. Its body twisted like a mountain in motion, its head crowned with jagged horns, its eyes burning with fire. The wanderer stumbled back, his heart hammering in his chest. The stranger, however, did not move. He stepped into the open, raising his hands as though in command. The beast's roar shook the valley, but it did not strike. It circled them, coiling, watching. "This is the final trial," the stranger said, his voice steady, almost reverent. "Survive this and the desert will release you." The wanderer clenched his fists. "And if I don't?" The stranger's gaze met his. "Then you become part of it, like the Watchers." The truth hit him like a blade. The Watchers had once been men, wanderers who failed the trial, now bound to the valley, cursed to watch forever. The beast struck suddenly, its colossal tail smashing into the cliffs, shattering stone. The wanderer dove aside, sand tearing his skin. He scrambled for weapons, finding only shards of rock and his will to live. The stranger stood firm, whispering words the wanderer could not understand. The monster lunged again, its maw opening wide, rows of jagged teeth glinting in the moonlight. With a cry, the wanderer hurled a shard of stone straight into its eye. The beast roared, thrashing wildly, sand exploding like waves. The stranger shouted, "Strike the heart!" The wanderer didn't hesitate. He ran toward the creature, dodging its violent thrashes, climbing onto its massive body. His hands bled as he gripped the rough scales, his body screaming in agony. He climbed higher, higher, until he reached the ridge of its skull. The beast reared back, shaking violently to throw him off. But he held on with the strength of desperation. With one final cry, he drove a jagged shard deep into the glowing seam of flesh between its armored scales. The desert roared. The ground shook. The beast thrashed, then collapsed, its body sinking slowly back into the sands from which it had risen. The valley grew still. Silence fell. Breathless, broken but alive, the wanderer staggered back to the ground. His vision blurred. He turned to the stranger, who stood watching with eyes that glowed brighter than ever. "You have done what no man before you could," the stranger said. "The desert accepts you. Now it will release you." Before the wanderer could speak, the stranger's body began to fade like smoke caught in the wind. His voice echoed one last time. "Remember this. Survival is not victory. It is transformation." And then he was gone. The dawn came on the 248th day. For the first time, the desert felt different. The heat was bearable. The winds were still. The endless dunes finally parted, revealing the horizon, green hills, water, life. The wanderer staggered forward, every step heavy, every breath a miracle. Against all odds, against the will of death itself, he emerged alive from the desert of no return. History never recorded his name, but his story remained, of the forgotten survivor who endured 248 days in a land where no man was meant to live.